Are you ready for the shocking truth about the beautiful facades of the Victorian era? Behind the neat lines, austere ornamentation, and shop windows reflecting carriages in the glow of gas lamps, there was a hidden side that people preferred not to talk about. Under the light of the shop windows, another life flowed, a hard, ragged life filled with sweat, clay, and the whistling of the wind in unfinished cornices. The city grew upward and outward, but its foundation was held by people whose names did not appear in the architect's plans. Each new neighborhood meant not only a growth in pride, but also an increase in mortality on construction sites. The price of this grandeur was measured not in gold, but in cut hands and colds in the damp wind over the Thames. Watch the video to the end to learn how the system of contracts and fines turned construction into a vicious circle, where every step up the ladder could end in a fall, and getting out of this circle was more expensive than staying in it. Are you ready to learn the truth about what lies behind the ornate Gothic spires and austere cornices? The first pages of architectural history are filled with the names of clients and architects, but not those who balanced on 6-inch planks to lay each stone. We are talking about people whose work hung over the street, at a height where the wind turned into a wall. They rose at dawn, walked on wet cobblestones, listening to the creaking of carts loaded with lime and sand. Their day began with checking the ropes, tightening the cables, and the first sound of a hammer on wet wood. The scaffolding was assembled from whatever was at hand: fresh timber, cables, and wedges, fitted by eye. Any mistake could cost lives, but there was no time for reconstruction. The contractor was pushing deadlines, and payment depended on volume, not caution. Any delay resulted in a fine. Risk was not an accident, but the norm. It was woven into the system as part of the contract that no one wrote about, but everyone knew. Dozens of teams worked on large projects, and each lived by its own unspoken rules. Some took on stone, others wood, and still others forged fasteners right at the foot of the construction site. Each group had its own rhythm, its own words, its own signs. If a board creaked 3 times, it had to be replaced. If a rope turned gray, it was no longer secure. Responsibility was spread across the chain of subcontractors, like lime mortar between joints. After an accident, no one knew who to blame: the supplier who skimped on wood, or the foreman who didn't have time to check the flooring. The contractor referred to the subcontractor, who referred to the foreman, and the circle was complete. The city grew on this silence, where everyone understood the price of a mistake, but no one had the right to stop the process. This is how an invisible order was born, in which danger became part of the craft. I am very interested to hear your point of view. How do you feel about a system where responsibility is diffused and risk becomes a profession? Write in the comments whether it is worth blaming people or the era itself, which built cities without considering the consequences. Guess how long it took to lay dozens of miles of track in wet earth and stone? The answer is striking, not because of the numbers, but because of the pace that squeezed every last ounce of strength out of people. Diggers, track layers, stone cutters, carpenters, thousands of hands working almost without sleep. The workers lived right on the line: canvas tents, fires made of railroad ties, the sound of hammers until nightfall. Dampness was everywhere, clay stuck to their boots, and rain ate away at their skin. They slept near the embankment and ate simple food: porridge, bread, and tea with sediment. The working day stretched from gray dawn to darkness, and then again: clearing, laying, tamping, sand, railroad ties, nails. When a cart with stones slipped off the platform or the ground gave way underfoot, no one stopped the construction. "We must finish before the section opens." This was not a request, but a sentence. The faster the line progressed, the greater the contractor's bonus, and the less right people had to take a break. So time became the new currency, and every minute was a guarantee of survival. Why did the pursuit of speed prove more important than caution? And what does this say about the value of human life in an era of progress? The piecework payment system made pace the main law. The teams raced to meet the quota, knowing that falling behind meant not only losing their earnings, but also their place in the barracks. A certain number of sleepers, embankments, and bricks had to be laid in the drains within a week. Otherwise, there would be a fine. Any injury took a person out of the chain. Missing work meant losing a bed, food, and credit at the shop. Taverns gave out bread and tobacco on credit to be paid for later, and this debt hung over them at every turn. Fatigue was not considered an illness, and fainting was not considered weakness. People took risks because they had no other choice. Help often came not from the company, but from fellow workers. Workers chipped in for funerals, medical treatment, boots for a widow. This is how small mutual aid funds were born, where support was the only law. In this race against time, embankments collapsed, lives were ruined, but new groups of workers arrived. Do you think that the race against time weakens any project, even if it looks like a technological victory? In the next chapter, you will learn why saving on materials cost more than all the contractors' bonuses. I will reveal the hidden side of cheap houses that grew on the outskirts faster than street numbers changed. Speculative construction became a separate business. Landowners hired contractors, who hired subcontractors, and everyone strove to stay within a ridiculous budget. Outwardly, everything looked decent. Smooth facades, new doors, fresh paint. But behind these facades lay shoddy workmanship. Mortar made of sand with not enough lime, bricks of different sizes and colors, beams made of cheap wood, sawn to the wrong size. The workers knew where the walls were hollow, where the masonry was held together by nothing more than a promise. They listened to the house as if it were a living body, tapping the joints with a hammer, probing cracks with their fingernails, searching for the sound that would reveal trouble. Everyone understood that this house would not last a decade, but no one could say it out loud. Cost-cutting went from top to bottom, from the developer to the last bricklayer. When the house was handed over, it seemed solid, but a year later it was already showing signs of settling, creaking, and cracking. They also cut corners on safety. The flooring was laid as construction progressed, and if someone was in a hurry, a step would turn into a void. The ropes wore out, but they weren't replaced. It's still holding. The masonry had barely set when the floors were already being laid on top of it. The premature load tore the joints, leaving thin cracks that were then painted over while the house still smelled of lime. Falling objects from a height became so frequent that the senior craftsmen wore thick caps, long jackets, and tied their sleeves with string. But neither caps nor experience could save them from wet boards and poor fastenings. Contractors were in a hurry to complete the project, and every day of delay cost them money. So saving money became not just a habit, but a system of survival in a competitive environment. The price of this system was human: fatigue, injuries, fear, and silence. Like this if you think that saving on safety always costs more than it seems in the estimate. And in the next chapter, you will learn how people stayed on top when there was nothing under their feet but ropes, boards, and the habit of trusting each other. Are you ready for the truth about how people stayed up high without the safety systems we are used to? No metal frames, no belts, no helmets, just boards, ropes, and trust. Safety was not built on regulations, but on the memory of hands. Every craftsman knew how a strong rope sounded, how a plank shook if there was a void beneath it. Before each shift, they checked the flooring, listening to see if there was any play underfoot, if the joints creaked, if the wood had darkened from moisture. Any small detail could determine the outcome of the day, but time was always against them. When the contractor was rushing them and the weather was pressing, these minutes of inspection were cut short. The risk grew quietly, almost imperceptibly, and became a familiar companion. Upstairs, the wind, dampness, and fatigue converged. One step could change everything, but they took that step because the plan had to be carried out. In the cities, the fog made it difficult to see even your own hands. Soot from factory chimneys settled on the decking, turning it into a mirror of dirt. Wet dust made the boards slippery and the ropes tight and brittle. Experienced bricklayers learned to read the sky. If the wind came from the west, expect a gust. If the sun became cloudy, expect fog. They asked to postpone work for an hour, but they were not always listened to. The customer did not want delays, the subcontractor was afraid of fines, and a compromise was reached only after the fall. After the incident, the site was quickly tidied up. Traces were removed, debris was swept away, and the usual order was restored. The city did not like to look at its mistakes. Silence hung over the crash site for a minute, then the hammering resumed. It seemed simple. Check, secure, wait. But the system at the time paid for results, not for waiting. Why did basic checks give way to haste, and can such haste be considered part of progress? In the next chapter, you will learn how workers lived outside the site and why their daily lives pushed them back into risk the very next day. There will be no spectacular stories here, only everyday life. After their shift, the workers returned to the barracks, where the walls breathed moisture and the windows fogged up from the inside. The air was heavy, mixed with the smell of wet clothes, clay, bread, and coal. The beds were so close together that at night you could feel your neighbor's shoulder. The stove barely held its heat, and warmth was distributed according to seniority. Those who worked upstairs slept closer to the fire. Clothes were drying right above their heads, steam rising to the ceiling and settling as frost. The owner of the barracks took payment in advance, and any day without work threatened eviction. The food was simple: cereal soup, a piece of bread, a little lard, tea with dark water. Sometimes they managed to buy beer to warm up before bed, but more often than not, they just wrapped themselves in a blanket and listened to the wind howling behind the thin wall. Debts grew faster than the walls of new houses. Taverns gave out food and tobacco on credit. Shopkeepers wrote down everything: soap, candles, socks. When the salary came, it was gone the same day. Part to the landlord, part to pay debts, part for firewood. By the next week, the person was back to square one. Injury or illness would instantly throw someone out of the system. Lose your job, lose your roof. Sometimes neighbors in the barracks would collect money for medical treatment, but more often they would simply take tools in lieu of debt. Rare days off were spent not on rest, but on small side jobs. Sewing clothes, chopping wood, helping out at a neighboring construction site. People got used to fatigue as they did to the weather. Complaining was useless. And so the cycle continued. A day on the scaffolding, a night in a damp barracks, debts, and then another day. Almost no one escaped this cycle, except those who left forever. Are you ready to learn a secret that will change your view of the hiring system? Formerly, everything looked simple. You came, showed your skills, and got a job. But behind this facade was an unofficial network of surveillance and unspoken labels. Each district had lists, notebooks where they noted who missed deadlines, argued with the master, or demanded new fasteners. Refused to work in dangerous weather a couple of times, and your name is already on the blacklist. No one announced this openly, but as soon as you arrived at another construction site, the foreman would suddenly say, "There are no vacancies." This is how discipline was maintained without paperwork or trials, but with clear consequences. It was a system of fear, subtle but effective. It forced people to remain silent, to agree, and not to look toward the authorities. Fines became a separate language of communication. Being late meant a day's pay deducted, A broken tool meant a week's pay deducted, and carelessness meant part of the piecework pay was deducted. Sometimes the punishment was imposed on the entire team in order to educate the collective. This made the atmosphere tense. No one wanted to be the reason for a deduction, and everyone watched everyone else. It was useless to argue. There were dozens of unemployed people standing outside the gates, ready to take your place. Contractors took advantage of this. They instilled in people the idea that work was an opportunity, not a right. Experienced craftsmen learned to speak briefly, not to argue, and to do their work perfectly so as not to give anyone a reason to punish them. A special language of silent consent developed on the sites, where every movement mattered and every mistake could be grounds for punishment. Thus, the system was based not on law, but on the fear of losing one's livelihood. But can such discipline be called fair? And can a project be reliable if the price of a mistake is not training, but dismissal? In the next chapter, you will learn how investigations began after tragedies and why they rarely changed reality, but still left a mark on the collective memory of the city. After major incidents, investigations began. Officials went to the scene, drew up reports, and listened to witnesses. On paper, everything looked strict: dates, names, signatures. But the outcome was almost always the same: accident while performing duties. It sounded like a cliché, but behind it lay the fatigue of the system. No one wanted to look for someone to blame, because the structure itself could turn out to be at fault. Newspapers wrote sparingly about the incidents, a couple of lines between the chronicle and the announcements. The main focus was not on the people, but on the delay. The bridge will open 2 weeks later. The names of the workers disappeared even faster than the cracks in the fresh mortar. The memory of the falls faded by morning, when new hands took the place of those who had died. Sometimes individual publications decided to write more loudly. Journalists described working conditions, asked questions about safety, and published appeals from widows. Then a debate would flare up in the city for a while. Some demanded rules, others talked about the free market and the price of progress. Parliament discussed the introduction of inspections, but these conversations rarely reached the construction sites. Paper remained paper, and the board still creaked in the wind. After each disaster, everything repeated itself: noise, statements, oblivion. Thus, a gap emerged between the pages of newspapers and the reality of construction sites, a void filled with daily caution and mutual assistance. People knew that it was better to rely on a comrade than on the letter of the law. Their silence became the real rule. Why did the memory of accidents fade so quickly? And why did society accept this cycle of oblivion? In the next chapter, you will learn how skill, pride, and craftsmanship turned risk into respect for the job and saved lives when the laws did not yet work. Despite the risk, there was always room for pride in the craft. A true master did not just lay bricks, he built rhythm, like a musician, a precise seam, a clean corner, a straight cornice line. All these were signs of dignity. People were proud that they could make the city strong, and this pride bound them together more strongly than any orders. The best artels kept up the tradition of passing on knowledge. The older ones showed the younger ones how to feel the weight of a stone, how to lay the first row, how to read a wall by ear. These skills weren't written down in books or taught in schools. They were passed on with a glance, a hand movement, a quick tip at the foot of the scaffolding. Even in a world of fines and fatigue, the craft remained a space of respect. Skill was real insurance. The ability to keep your balance on a narrow platform, feel the wind on your back, hear the board talk under your feet. All this saved lives. An experienced foreman did not need instructions. He sensed danger in advance and knew how to stop work for the sake of a single check. People listened to him not because he was the boss, but because he came home in one piece. Where the foreman had authority, there were fewer accidents. Where haste broke the hierarchy, the risk increased. These unnoticed leaders kept the system in balance. Their calmness was what replaced regulations and insurance. But along with skill, fatigue also grew. Years on the scaffolding took away their eyesight, joints, and breath. People aged faster than the city they were building. However, there was also pride in this. Seeing a house standing, knowing that your hand was in every brick. This was a quiet reward. Not a medal, not a newspaper article, but the respect of neighbors and students. Do you think it is possible today to bring back this sense of personal responsibility and pride in the result, not through fear, but through respect for the work? In the next chapter, you will learn how materials, weather, and work schedules turned every construction site into a battle with nature itself. Moisture prevented the mortar from setting, and the cold made the wood brittle. Autumn rain washed away the trenches, the wind from the river blew away the light decking, and the fog obscured the visibility of the entire neighborhood. The construction site turned into a living organism subject to the elements. People learned to work with this as if it were a character trait. In the morning, they checked the joints to see if the mortar had cracked from the night frost, and in the evening, they covered the hardening areas with burlap. In winter, they lit fires directly under the arches so that the bricks would not freeze. But deadlines were not waiting, unofficial schedules were pressing, and every day of downtime was considered a failure. Therefore, they often took risks. They installed floors ahead of schedule, laid bricks on unripe mortar, and dried wood by the fire until it cracked. These compromises seem minor, but they contributed to the fragility of the entire city. Suppliers delivered mixed batches of materials, some well-fired, some cheap. The bricks differed in sound, but there was no time to sort them. On large projects, this could be smoothed over with extra stock, but on small ones, decisions had to be made on the spot. The foreman made the selection. The best bricks went on the facade, the average ones went inside, and the poor ones went in the basement. Thus, the architecture of the city depended not only on the blueprints, but also on the craftsman's hearing and honesty. The strength of the arch, the warmth of the house, and the fate of the residents depended on his decision. And on top of that, there was still the pressure of the budget and the schedule. It was a quiet war with circumstances, where the winners were not those who took risks, but those who knew how to maintain quality in chaos. But even the best decisions could not save them from nature. Spring floods washed away foundations. Winter frosts tore apart joints, and the wind knocked down floors. Workers rebuilt, reinforced, and repaired, often at night without light, with only a lamp and the steam from their mouths. This is how buildings that have survived for centuries were born. Why does the desire for speed always conflict with the logic of materials? And is it possible to build quickly and reliably at the same time? In the next chapter, you will learn how changes gradually came to the city. Not instantaneous, but real, which finally began to change the rules of the game. The changes did not begin with loud slogans, but with fatigue accumulated over the years. When the number of injuries could no longer be contained in reports, when notes about accidents became commonplace, the first inspectors appeared. They came not as enemies, but as observers, without threats or shouting, simply noting that a person cannot work without sturdy gloves, that the ladder needs to be reinforced, that frost makes the floor slippery. Their appearance was not a revolution. It looked like a quiet reminder. Life is more valuable than speed. At first, no one listened to them. Senior foremen grumbled that the inspections were getting in the way, that paperwork was killing speed. Workers avoided them, afraid of fines and bans. But gradually it became clear. Inspections did not kill the rhythm of construction, they saved people. One day lost was worth less than a life lost. So a new element entered the system, time for reflection. It hadn't been there before. Now every team knew. Before starting a shift, they could check the flooring, secure the block, and check the rope. This was not considered a weakness. It became part of the job. Hard fabric helmets appeared, then metal ones, then lightweight but sturdy ones. Gloves with leather inserts, belt fasteners, steel toe caps on boots. There were even courses that taught how to stand at height, how to lift a load without jerking, how not to expose your back to wind. These courses were less about theory and more about common sense. People learned to see danger in advance and understand how to avoid it. These were small revolutions that arose from below, without posters or directives. And although many laughed at first, we did without this before. Over time, everyone understood that safety is also a skill, also part of the craft, just like the ability to hold a plumb line or lay an even seam. The city began to understand the value of human labor. Workers ceased to be a faceless mass, part of the mechanism that drives construction forward. Their names began to appear on lists of award winners, in newspaper articles, and in official acknowledgments. Newspapers began to write not only about deadlines, but also about people, about masters, about brigades, about those who keep the line. Architectural magazines began to mention work ethic and the dignity of craftsmanship. Construction became a business where not only speed was important, but also care. Bricks were still laid by hand, but now every pair of hands had the right to rest, to medical care, to respect. The word insurance appeared, and it ceased to be something abstract. People began to talk about compensation, sanitary standards, clean water, and warm rooms for lunch. Medical stations and showers appeared on the sites, and ventilation and larger windows appeared in the barracks. What was once considered a luxury became a requirement. Even a kettle with hot water ceased to be a personal privilege of the master and became a mandatory item. The new generations no longer knew the fear that the first ones had. They came to the construction site not as a test, but as a job where they could grow and learn. They were taught how to use tools, to take breaks, and not to chase performance indicators at any cost. But the memory of their elders did not disappear. Echoes of the old silence remained, in the habit of not complaining, in cautious silence in front of the boss, in respect for danger, in the ability not to panic when a rope breaks or the floorboards crack. This restraint was a continuation of survival. The system had changed, but people's character remained the same. They still kept their balance at height, only now they had a net under their feet. They still laid bricks, only now they knew there was a doctor nearby. Their movements still embodied precision, caution, and professional pride. And if you asked them why they did all this, they would simply answer, to keep the city standing. Why does every improvement come through pain? Why do changes always seem slow when it comes to life? And why do safety lessons only come after losses? And in conclusion, you will learn what remained in this story after the last scaffolding was removed and the city took on its new appearance. Calm, confident, built by hands that had learned to protect themselves. Today, walking through the old neighborhoods, it is difficult to imagine how many hands have held these walls. The bricks have darkened, the joints have become thinner, but the rhythm of the masonry remains recognizable. These houses do not reveal the dramas that lie within them. They stand calmly, as if they had grown on their own. Traces of labor are hidden in their surfaces. Fingerprints, dents from tools, slight deviations in lines that only the eye of a master can see. All these are traces of human presence that cannot be erased by time. The city preserves them, even if it does not know their names. And perhaps that is why the city seems alive. It is not made of stone, but of people's habit of maintaining balance. Their labor has become a silence from which streets grow. This is the form of memory when calm, reliable, human. Write your opinion in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to learn more interesting facts about history.